Hello everyone, my name is Pretty April L. Padilla. In this video, I'm going to discuss my report entitled The Organizing the Speech. So let's proceed to the PowerPoint presentation.
So, my topic is about organizing the speech. Let's proceed. Here are the following intended learning outcomes, or also known as ILO, such as identify the two important functions of organizing speech, determine the relationship between the speech organization to audience perception, and explain the three main parts of organizing speech and apply these main parts of communication. What is an organizing the speech? Can you give me your idea? Pause this video and share your ideas below in this video or comment box. In my opinion, organizing the speech is also known as well structured and fix your details inside of your speech. However, some of the however, there is one of information that I gathered. They have two important functions that serves of organizing speeches. First, organization helps improve clarity of thought in a systematic way, and I agree with this statement because it helps your speech to be clear and it will be understandable, as well as there also have an outline for your guide what will be the next transition. Next is organization increases the likelihood that the speech will be effective. So if there is kind of similarities about your organizations, like at the beginning it was really organized, there's a possibility that at the end it will be organized because you apply it in the same method and your speech will be effective. There is a relationship between the speech organization to audience perceptions. That's why there is question how a speech organization was related to audience perceptions of those speeches. Actually, there are three persons who actually find these answers and study about these speech organizations related to audience perceptions of those speeches. First is from Raymond Smith's study. He stated first, when speeches were randomly organized, the audience perceived the speech more negatively, or the audience aware the speech more negatively than when audience were presented with a speech with clear, intentional organization. Okay? If a speaker has a randomly organized, there's a possibility that the audience could be aware with that. And and they will thought that your speech will be somewhat good or not. Then when audience were presented with a speech like really clear and you are actually apply organizing. However, there is a conclusion of his statement that the audience who listen to an organized speech, the result is the audience were less interested to listen in those speeches than audience who listen to organized speeches. So this is what she thought why speech organization or how the speech organization was related to audience perception of those speeches. Because it is very important for the audience. If they have a speech organization, then there would be possible that the audience are interested to listen those speeches. Okay, so it means there's somewhat the power was the audience, so that the speaker would be have give more information that helps to the audience. So these are by having an organized speech, the audience will listen or interested to listen. Okay? Next, by Thompson's study, he said he furthered this investigation and found that unorganized speeches were hardly for audience to recall after the speech. Because he has a hypothesis, people remember information from speeches that are clearly organized and forget information from speeches that are poorly organized. I actually agree his hypothesis about having clearly organized or poorly organized because it has gives um, results for the audience. How did evaluate the speech of a speaker? So make sure that the speaker has a organized speech in order for the audience couldn't hardly for them to recall. Next is from Baker's study. When audience were presented with a disorganized speaker, the audience were less likely to be persuaded and they saw the speaker as lacking credibility. So this one is about the audience were less persuaded and they thought the speaker has a lacking credibility. So make sure as a speaker you should have organized speech because the audience will be persuaded or convincing from a speaker, and they thought that all the evidences are credibility or valid. So, if you notice they have a different thoughts or answering about those questions, like how a speech organization was related to audience perceptions of those speeches. So the first one is by Raymond Smith. If If you have organized speech, the audience are interested to listen the speech. Second one from Thompson's, he said, if you have an organized speech, it wouldn't be hardly to recall or to remember the audience after the speech. And lastly is that Baker study, if a speaker has a organized speech, the audience are persuaded or convinced, and they thought and saw the speaker has a good credibility. If the speaker doesn't have applied his organized speech, he or she continue about this organized speech, you know already what is the result. Either the audience were less interested to listen the speech. Second, it's harder for the audience to recall the speech. And the third is the audience were less to be persuaded and saw a speaker has a lacking credibility. Make sure to remember those disadvantage of disorganized speech. Let's proceed. The three main parts. Speeches that organize. Yeah, maybe you guys already know what are the three main parts if you were writing an essay or a speech. And these are introduction, preview and set everything up for the audience. Body provides the substance and details. And lastly is conclusion brings it back all around and summary. But let's dig in more about this. It helps you or guide you how you can make effective or how will you organize your speech. This three main parts. If you apply this, I guess you have organized speech. Let's proceed. Introduction. We all know that the introductions are actually first, and it is important contact between the speaker and the audience. And make sure your introduction should last less than a minute or 10 minutes to discuss. If you didn't apply this, you know already what is the result. The audience will not interested to listen your long introduction. Introduction just like give like a highlight word that gives them interest to continue to listen your speech. But in introduction, there have three things that need to accomplish your introduction. First is focus your audience's attention. Being a speaker has an equipment, and this is called attention grabber. If a speaker has applied this kind of equipment, then there's a possibility that the audience are interested to listen the speaker's speech because speakers need to orient and make connections to an audience. Why? Because of they would give them an evaluation about their speaking. And also the audience is not only to evaluate the communication skills of a speaker, also it helps them or reflect them those information from speaker from them like that. That's why speakers and audience will be one or unite each other or have a connection. Second thing is establish goodwill and credibility. Goodwill is make sure the speaker must have ethos which generated by both delivery style and content of the speech. And there is two important ways to establish ethos, which is the eye contact and confidence in a voice and body. And this would be the result of having a credibility. If the speaker apply this kind of method, which is ethos, the audience will consider him or her as intellectual character because the way he speak or the way he's talk, it really give them a convincing to the audience. Next, third is give a preview, mentioning the main points to be covered in the body. And second is the preview should end with a transition. Make sure if you were almost done in introduction, don't be indicate about, okay, let's proceed to the body. No, it's not like that. Give them main points or the three main points that covered in the body or have a good transition because if you have three main points that indicate in the body, they will guess it like, oh, he or she proceed to the body. So how you have to make a good transition. Actually, there have a type of transition. Good transitions, relations between parts of speech. In other words, they have been a logical speech event. Next is the common transition phrases, such as there is the words with that, include in addition to, furthermore, even more, next, after that, then, as a result, beyond that, in contrast, however, and on the other hand. And the third one is internal summary, brief statement of the main point being completed. So you can choose the types of transition for going to the body. But for me, I'm more on using about the good transition, like to indicate proves the result of your introduction. Next is body. Okay, this is second one. So in the body, you have a main point. I think it's good for having a fewer, and I recommend you it's better for you to have a three main points because I do believe like three tests it's actually good for that. Three chances for the game it's good also. Same as well here in the organizing a speech. It's better for you to have a three main points because that will be convincing and credibility for your speech. And make sure your main point should be clearly stated and signposted. So what are the signposted means? This is also called transitions. And these are first, second, third, or first, next, finally. Oh, before that, I would like to recommend you it is better to use first, second, and third instead of first, next, finally. Why? If you are used at the end of at the end of the main point, which is finally, there's a possibility have confused or complicated for the audience. The audience will thought it like, oh, the speaker are actually in conclusion part, but the speaker was still discussing in the body part, which is the last main point. So so in other words, it's better for you to use first, second, third instead of first, next, finally. They have a common modes of organizing the information in the body of your speech, or in other words, have an organizing styles inside the body. But this is not my responsibility to report this because it will report to the next reporter. But I will give you a view about this or a knowledge about the organizing or organization styles in speech. Temporal organization, when it happened or will happen. Cause effect, we already know that. Spatial patterns is about space, so physical arrangement, topical designs, and compare and contrast, like differences and similarities. Let's proceed to the last main point, the conclusion. Somewhat shorter, yes, it's true, than the introduction. But there is a two purposes that why you need to accomplishment the conclusion. First is summarize the main ideas, and second is give the speech a sense of closure and completion without hanging, in other words. So, there have a method for having a good conclusion. Good conclusion might refer back to the introduction, like leave the audience with a question or a challenge of some type. There's some of the example, especially in TED Talks, like speaker, like um a kid is special, and I forgot her name. She is a Black American. Is very inspirational. Like she was being follow or inclined of his family of being educator. So the end of her speech, which is the conclusion, he actually indicated the idea of the introduction, which is the title itself and the question. While the brief quotations can also make effective conclusion. I agree with that because mostly in the report, in my situation, one of my classmates gave a speech about it, and here actually stated about the brief quotations that could give us mark in our mind and heart that we will use it until we achieve our goal to be a successful one. So you can choose either good conclusions, like go back to the introduction and leave the audience with a question or give them challenge type, or brief quotation. So the three main parts are introduction, body, and conclusion. So I hope you learned something in my report, and thank you so much for your time to listen and watch my video. Have a nice day, guys.